Chapter 5, The Rage. When fire begins, liberation. Do you not rise gently? You do not rise gently. You rise from the wreckage, from the broken glass and the burning walls, from the ashes of the life you thought you were supposed to have. Do not rise because I did not rise because I was ready. I rose because I had no choice. Because the truth was, I had already died, not physically, but spiritually, emotionally. The version of me that had learned how to survive, the version of me that built walls, which lived in silence, which learned how to stay small, the version of me was gone. In the aftermath, I stood there, bare, exposed, empty. I thought the emptiness would kill me, but it did not. It saved me because the fire did not just destroy the pain, it destroyed the illusion that I was weak, the illusion that I was broken, the illusion that I was not enough. All the lies, all the lies I told myself, all the stories I had wrapped around my soul, all the identities I had clung to, gone, burned to the ground, ashes at my feet, and the emptiness I felt. The quiet voice beneath the noise, the steady pulse, breathing, the chaos, the truth is beneath the story. I'm still here. It was not loud, it was not demanding, it was quiet, sure, unshaken. The soul does not scream, it whispers, because the soul knows it does not need to fight to be heard. For the first time in my life, I heard it. It and it was saying, fix yourself. It was saying, try hard. It was not saying you're broken. It was saying, come home, let's go. You don't have to fight anymore. Man. And that is when I understood the war was not outside of me. It never was. The war was within me. I had been fighting myself the whole time, fighting my own heart, fighting my own softness, fighting the truth I did not want to face, fighting the surrender I did not want to allow, because healing is not about strength, it is about softness, it is about opening your hands. You don't have, but you have had in the first first fist of the year. Yeah, that's in hands you have had in fists for years. Okay? It is about letting the armor fall to the ground, and that is terrifying because without the armor, you're exposed. Without the armor, you must trust. Without the armor, you must let yourself be seen. And that is the part that almost broke me because the armor was safe. The armor kept the world out. The armor let me survive. But surviving is not living. And and I do not want to survive anymore. I want to breathe again. I want to feel the sun on my face again. I want to laugh without worrying if it would be taken against me. So then laugh. It's the only thing we got left of the day. And so I stood there on the edge of my new life, still bruised, still bleeding, still shaking, and opened my hands. I let the armor fall. I let the fear rise and fade. I trusted the truth settling in my chest. And then a fire came, not to destroy, but to liberate. Because the rage that used to burn through me, the rage that used to consume me, was no longer against myself. It was no longer turned inward. It was now power. It was now strength. It was now fuel. I had spent my life trying to tame my rage. This is very unprofessional, I'm sorry. I spent my life trying to tame the rage, trying to silence it, trying to push it down. But the rage is not the enemy. The rage is a sign. Rage is the fire that clears the path. Rage is the force that says no more. No more shaking, no more settling, no more apologies for who I am. No more giving myself away to people who do not know how to love me. No more staying small because it makes other people comfortable. No more betraying myself to keep the peace. No more. The fire was not there to destroy me, it was here to free me. And so I let it burn. I let it rise through my chest. I let it fill my lungs. I let it flow through my veins. And for the first time, I did not run from it. I did not try to control it. I did not try to make it pretty. I let it burn through every lie I had ever told myself. I let it touch every story that was not true. I let it incinerate every illusion of weakness. And when the smoke cleared, I was still standing, not broken, not weak, not lost, alive, awake, unafraid, because the fire was not here to kill me. It was here to remind me of who I have always been, of what has always been true. I was not weak, I was not broken, I was not lost, I was whole, I was powerful, I was free. And so I stood there, heart pounding, breath shaking, and smiling because I finally understood the fire was not the end, it was the beginning. That is the end of chapter 5. We'll be starting up chapter 6 next. Alright, let's try this again since O.B.S. crashed on me. I had to rebuild it from the ground up, as it did not fully record. Of course it did. Chapter 6, The Grief. After the fire, the ashes remain. You do not get to rise without mourning what you lost. That is the part of you they do not tell you about. Healing after the fire, after the rage, after the collapse, the grief, raw, heavy, unforgiving. Because even when you knew it had to end, even when you knew the old version of you had to die, it still hurts. Because of those old patterns, those old relationships, those old stories, those were not just pain, they were comfortable, they were familiar, they were the scaffolding that held your life together, and that was gone. And you are standing there in the wreckage, in the silence, feeling the weight of all that had been stripped away. I thought the hardest part would be letting go, but it was not. The hardest part was realizing that once I let go, there was nothing left to hold on to. The rage was gone, the fire had burned out, and that was just me. And that was when the grief came. Not loud sobs, but quiet waves. It shows up in the morning, showed up in the morning, that heaviness in my chest, that emptiness when the chaos, where the chaos used to live, the quiet ache, breath, on the breath, the surface of my skin.
It showed up in the space between conversations, the hollow the hollow feeling of realizing that I did not know who I was anymore, because the pain was familiar, the struggle was familiar, even the rage was familiar, but peace, stillness, that was new. The mind hates new, the ego hates quiet, so the mind starts pulling up old threads. Maybe you were wrong, maybe we should go back, maybe it wasn't that bad, but the soul was still. The soul was not interested in going back because the soul knew the truth. The fire was not a mistake. The destruction was not an accident. That was the path. That was the path. That was the truth. And the grief was the punishment. It was released. Grief is the price of freedom. You do not get to be free without letting go. You do not get to rise without losing something. And the thing about grief is, it is not just mourning what you lost. It was mourning the version of you that had survived it. Because that version of you, the one who endured the chaos, the turmoil, the trauma, the one who held it together, the one who learned how to survive in the darkness, that version of you got you here. And now you had to let them go. Let them go. That is the part that almost broke me. Because the part of me that was holding on, the part of me that built the walls, that learned how to self-destruct, that learned how to exist in survival mode, that part of me was not evil, it was not wrong, it was doing its job, it was protecting me, and now I had to lay it down. I had to sit with that version of me and say, thank you, you got me through the darkness, you kept me alive, but now you can rest, because survival mode is not living, and I was ready to live. But that does not mean it does not hurt. It does not mean the grief did not cut deep. Grief is love where no one to go. Grief is love with yet nowhere to go. Grief is the heart learning how to breathe in the absence of what used to hold you together. And so I let myself grieve. I let the tears come. I let the memories rise and fall. I let the quiet night feel hollow. I did not try to fill the space. I did not try to cover it up. I did not try to numb it. I just let it be. That is when I realized grief is not punishment. Grief was proof. Grief proof that I had loved deeply, proof that I had survived, proof that I had been courageous enough to care, proof that I was alive. And that is the thing about grief. It does not go away. It softens, it becomes part of you, it weaves itself into the fabric of who you are. It's not heavy, it's not as heavy, but as deep. And that is where the shift happens. I stopped trying to escape grief. I stopped trying to outrun the emptiness. I stopped trying to fill the quiet. I sat with it. I let it teach me. I let it carve out new space inside me. Because grief is not the end. Grief is the opening. Grief is not the hollow space where the new self begins to grow. Yeah, grief is the hollow space where the new self begins to grow. Because now there was room for more, room to soften, room for peace, room for new love, room to live. And so I stood there in the emptiness, the stillness, in the quiet aftermath, and I did not feel lost. I felt open, unfolded, whole, because the grief was not breaking me anymore. It was not making space for something new. And so I whispered through the quiet, through the stillness, okay, I'm ready. Ready to rise, ready to breathe again, ready to love again. Not from emptiness, but from fullness. Not from fear, but from peace. That is the end of chapter 6. I hope you got O.B.S. worked correctly and recorded this correctly. And I will hopefully see all of you in the next chapter. See you soon. Alright, before we start chapter 7, I would just like to state that if you can hear my fans going on in the background, it is simply because it is 98 degrees where I live right now, and I'm being cooked alive. So please bear with me, all the background noise, as we try to get through the rest of this. We're on chapter 7. There's only 14 chapters to this, so we're literally halfway done. And I'm hoping I can get all this edited and posted before the end of the month. Anyway, sorry about that distraction. Continuing. Chapter 7, The Surrender, when the Creator reaches for you. You do not surrender because you have failed. You surrender because you have realized it was never yours to carry. That is the difference. Surrendering is not weakness, it is strength. It is not giving up, it is laying it down. I do not understand. I did not understand that at first. I thought surrender meant quitting. I thought it meant backing down. I thought it meant becoming small, powerless, but I was wrong. Because surrender is not the loss of power, it is the transfer of power. From the mind to the soul, from the ego to the divine. I remember the exact moment it happened. I had come through grief, through the fire, through the rage, through the emptiness. I had burned it all down. I had stripped away the old version of myself. I had let go of the stories, the patterns, the survival mechanisms, and now there was nothing left to hold on to. And that is when the fear hit. Not the sharp kind of fear, the quiet kind, the kind that shows up when you realize you are no longer in control, because the mind hates not knowing, the mind craves patterns, the mind craves logic, the mind wants to know what happens next. Not mine. I am an unbridled ball of chaos and depression. I am okay with that. But there was no... Sorry, I got sweat in my eyes. Give me a second. Sorry about that. But there was no next. There was no map. There was no plan. Just space, just stillness, just waiting. And the waiting nearly broke me, because the mind was built for action. The mind was built for survival. The mind was built to find solutions. There was no solutions there. There was no problem to fix. There was no enemy to fight. And that is when I realized the fight was over, the war was over, the battle was done. I had been holding my fists in the air for so long, fighting an invisible enemy, clenching my jaw, holding my breath, guarding my heart, and now there was nothing left to fight. And I did not know how to live without the fight, because the fight meant giving me strength, the fight gave me purpose, made me the fight made me feel alive. So I stood there, and still shaking, mind still spinning, heart still pounding, and whispered, "What now?" And that was when I felt it, I heard it, saw it, soft, quiet, undeniable, a pressure, a knowing, a presence, a knowing, a hand on my shoulder, not physical, but energetically? A warmth washed over me from the top of my head down to my feet as it swept. And I didn't speak a word, because the divine does not need language. It spoke through silence. It spoke through peace. It spoke through the weight that fell off my chest. And I knew I was not alone. I had never been alone. The whole time I was fighting, the whole time I was building walls, the whole time I was screaming at the sky. I was not abandoned. I was being held. Even when I couldn't feel it, he was there. Even when I couldn't see it, he was there. Because that is the thing about God. He does not abandon you when you close the door. He sits outside and waits, patiently unmoving, knowing that one day you'll finally stop running. You'll finally open the door. You'll finally get quiet enough to hear him. And that's and at that moment I got quiet. I stopped trying to fix it. I stopped trying to figure it out. I stopped trying to make sense of it all. And I let myself be held. I let the presence of God wash over me. I let the warmth sink into my bones. I let the fear rise and dissolve. I let the mind scream and fade into silence. And that was when I realized it was never mine to carry the pain, the disappointment, the brokenness, the betrayal, the loss. It was never mine to fix. It was never mine to control. It was never mine to carry alone. And so I fully surrendered, not as defeat, but as alignment. Because the mind cannot heal you, the ego cannot save you, the mind was built for survival, not for thrill. Thriving, what the fuck? Oh, thrival. The mind was not built. The mind was built for survival, not to thrive. Thriving is the soul's job, and the soul cannot rise when the mind is still trying to drive. So I let my mind go. I let the thoughts come and go. I let the fear rise and fade. I let the tension in my chest. Let the tension melt from my chest. I let the tears fall, and I whispered, "It's not mine alone." And I handed over to God, to the vine, to the presence that had been there all along, waiting for me to finally trust it. And I did not need to control it anymore. I did not need to carry it anymore. I didn't fix it anymore. I just needed to allow for what was for his and his alone. And that is the secret of surrender. It is not a weakness, it is alignment. It is stepping into the flow instead of swimming against it. It is learning how to trust instead of control. It is letting the divine lead instead of demanding that life means your expectancy. And so I stood there, heart quiet, mind open, soul still, and whispered, "I trust you, I'm ready. I'm ready to rise, ready to rebuild, ready to live, not from fear, but from alignment, not from ego, but from the soul." That is the end of chapter 7. We'll be starting chapter 8 next. Ah! Ah! Oh god, that sucked. Yeah, sorry. Chapter 9. The beginning. When peace becomes power. Yeah. Sorry about that. I woke up different, not because life suddenly became perfect, not because the outside world had changed, but because I was no longer fighting it. I was not trying to fix it anymore. I was not trying to control it anymore. I was not asking for signs anymore, because I had become the sign. Neon or platinum?
It was subtle at first. The way I moved, the way I breathed, the way my feet touched the ground when I walked. It was not rushing anymore. I was not bracing for impact anymore. I was not looking over my shoulder. My body wasn't in defense mode anymore. My breathing was not shallow. My jaw was not tight. My chest was not caged. I had landed, full, complete, unapologetically. I was no longer surviving, I was living. And that is the difference. Healing is not about getting rid of the pain. It is no longer about letting the pain define you. It is no longer about building your life around the wounds. It is about no longer needing to carry the weight of the past. Because now I am not looking back anymore. Shit. Did I put that? I lost my place. I was not even looking forward. I was standing in the present, fully rooted, fully steady, fully enough. The mind still tries to rise sometimes. Yeah, the mind still tries to rise sometimes. I still whispered fear. It still tried to recreate old patterns. I still looked for familiar chaos. But the difference now was I didn't react. I did not engage. I did not follow it down the spiral. I could hear the mind, but I did not believe it anymore. Because now I knew the truth. I was not broken. I was not lost. I was not abandoned. I was whole. I was aligned. I was supported. The universe was not testing me. It was supporting me. It was guiding me. It was clearing my path. And now I was ready to walk it. Not from force, not from desperation, not from fear, but from peace. Because peace is not passive. Because peace is not passive. Peace is power. Peace is the quiet strength beneath the storm. Peace is the unraveling pressure, breath in the chaos. Yeah, breath, the chaos, whatever that's supposed to be. And that is when I realized I was no longer reaching for peace. I was peace. I was no longer asking for strength. I was strength. I was no longer looking for guidance. I was the guidance. Because once you have surrounded, once you have let go of the need to control, once you have stopped begging for clarity, the path starts to unfold naturally, not because you forced it, but because you stopped resisting it. I was not. Hang on, what the fuck? The word is striving, but for a second there I could have sworn it was saying starving. Yeah, I was not striving anymore. For some reason I kept wanting to say starving. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with me. I was not searching anymore. I was not reacting anymore. I was moving from place of certainty, not from thought, from knowing, not from logic, but from alignment, not from ego, but from soul. The world began to respond differently. People showed up differently. Opportunities unfolded differently. Love began to flow towards me, not because I was chasing it, but because I had become a match for it. My energy changed, my presence shifted, my body language softened, my voice steadied. I stopped needing to prove myself. I stopped needing to defend myself. I stopped needing to justify my worth. I simply was. And that is the thing about becoming. You do not have to force it. You do not have to figure it out. You do not have to make it happen. Yeah. If I can turn the page. It was simple. You simply align and allow. The mind still tried to interfere sometimes. It still whispered, what if all falls apart? What if you lose it again? What if you're wrong? But not now. I knew how to meet fear, not with resistance, but with softness, not with panic, but breathing and buckshot. That's my personal opinion. Because fear is not a threat anymore. Fear is just energy. And energy moves when you let it flow. Agree or disagree on that one? So I stopped trying to push it away. I stopped trying to silence it. I stopped trying to fix it. I simply allowed it to rise and pass. Because I finally understood peace is not the absence of fear. Peace is knowing you are bigger than fear. And that's when life starts responding to me differently. Doors opened, opportunities flowed, love showed up without conditions. Not because I forced it, not because I chased it, but because I earned it, because I became it. I stopped asking for abundance and became abundant. I stopped asking for clarity, became clear. I stopped asking for strength and became strong. Ooh, sorry about that. Not because I forced it, but because I remembered it was the way, always within me. I didn't have to react anymore. I didn't have to chase it anymore. I didn't have to beg for it anymore. I simply stood in it, breathed it in, lived it. Because becoming is not about striving. It is about allowing. It is about embodying. It is about trusting the divine flow. And so I stood there in quiet, stillness, fullness, and whispered, I'm ready. Not as a plea, as a declaration. Because I was not searching anymore, I was walking in it, I was living in it, I was it. And that's when I realized I had already become. Okay, that's the end of chapter 9. Starting up on chapter 10. Alright, chapter 8. The Awakening. Chapter 8. The Awakening, when the ego finally breaks. It did not happen to me at once. Awakening does not hit you like a lightning bolt. It rises slowly, quietly, like the sun breaking through the darkness. One moment you're standing in the wreckage, feeling the weight of everything that has fallen apart, and the next you realize you are still breathing, and it is not just survival. You feel it differently next time. It's not like when you're holding on, not like you're bracing for the next hit, but like you are finally standing in the truth of who you are, unarmored, unburdened, unapologetic. And the world feels still, not empty, not cold, but open. I remember the exact moment it happened. It was not loud, it was not dramatic, it was quiet, like the final piece of the puzzle snapped into place. I was standing outside, barefoot on the ground, feeling the earth beneath my feet. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the wind was cutting through my chest, sharp and clean. And for the first time in years, I was not trying to hold it together.
My shoulders were not tense. My breathing was not shallow. My heart was not racing. I was just there. Full of presence, full of life, and then it hit me. The silence was not emptiness. It was sacred. The stillness was not punishment, it was peace. The mind, still searching for something to fix, a problem, some problem to solve, a threat to prepare for. The soul was no longer listening to the ego, no longer was the mind in control. The war was over. The ego was still trying to rise, still whispering, what if it doesn't last? What if it's only temporary? What if you lose it all again? But the soul did not care because the soul knew the truth. It was not about holding on anymore. It was not about figuring it out anymore. It was not about control anymore. It was about trusting. It was about divine guidance. And that is when I knew I was nothing, just surviving anymore. I was not just healing anymore. I was becoming. I felt it in my body first, the way my chest opened when I breathed in, the way my shoulders softened, the way my jaw unclenched. My muscles stopped bracing, my breathing moved deeper, my spine lengthened. My feet felt heavier on the ground. I was not trying to escape my body anymore. I was not trying to disappear. I was not trying to make myself small. I was rooted. I was breathing. I was rooted in my breathing, my body, my soul. For the first time, I was not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was not waiting for something to go wrong. I was looking over my shoulder because even if it didn't, even if it all fell apart again, I knew I would survive it. I knew I would rebuild it because I knew the truth. I was not alone. I was never alone. I was never abandoned. I was never forgotten. I was never broken. The universe had been guiding me this whole time through the fire, through the loss, through the silence, through the surrendering. Every no was protection. Every ending was clear. Every loss was alignment. The universe had not betrayed me. It was positioning me, preparing me, teaching me how to trust again, teaching me how, teaching me how to trust again. And now I trusted not just in fragment, conditional ways, fragile conditional ways, not because things were easy, not because life was perfect, but because I finally understood it was never about perfection. It was about presence. It was never about knowing what comes next. It was about standing in what is here now. And that is the difference. Awakening is not about figuring it all out. It is about being okay with not knowing. It is about trusting that the path you reveal itself as you walk it. Because now I could feel the divine in my bones. in my breath, my blood. It was not about trying to manifest anything or anymore. I was not asking for signs anymore. I was not trying to force it anymore. I was the sign, I was the alignment, I was the flow, and the deeper truth. I did not have to fight it. I did not have to prove myself worth for it. I did not have to beg for it. I had become it. I was standing in place, rooted in it, living it. And so I stood there, whole there, feet on the ground, breathing in my chest, and smiled because I finally understood awakening is not about destruction. Awakening is the path. Awakening is the unfolding. And I was no longer resisting it. I was no longer trying to escape it. I was no longer searching for it. I was standing in it, becoming it, owning it. And that is when I whispered, not as a prayer, not as a request, but as a quiet declaration, I am awake. That's the end of chapter 8, starting at chapter 9 next. Chapter 10, the creation when purpose finds you. It was not an effort anymore. I wasn't struggling anymore. I was not something I had figured out anymore. Oh, that was not something I had to figure out anymore. I was just flow. Okay. Creation did not feel heavy. It did not feel forced. I did not want to try. It felt like breathing. It felt like gravity. It felt like something inside of me had cracked open. And now the energy was pouring through me, unstoppable, unshaking, because the truth was I had to stop searching for purpose, and that was when I found, and that is when it found me. Purpose is not something you chase. It is not something you can earn. It is something you figure out. Purpose is revealing. It rises with the noise. It rises when the noise settles. It shows up when the mind finally stops interfering. It finds you when you are ready, not when you are desperate. Yeah, desperate. And that is where I was. Not desperate, not searching, not begging for a sign. I was simply open, available, aligned, and purpose began to rise. It felt I felt it first in my body, the quiet energy in my chest, the warm pulse. Yeah, the warm pulse breath in my skin. The substance knowing that I'm supposed to be here. I think I'm having a stroke. I was not questioning it anymore. I was not doubting anymore. I was not waiting for validation anymore because I simply understood purpose is not a destination. Purpose is not a job. Purpose is not a title. The purpose is energy. The purpose is frequency. Purpose is a vibration you create when you are fully aligned with your soul. Oh my God. It is not about what you do. It is about how you are. And that is why I had to. That is why I had missed it before. Because I was trying to force it. I'm sorry, give me a second. I'm terribly sorry about that. My cat decided that he was more important than me finishing this book. Sorry about that. Where was I? Because I was trying to force it, trying to mold it into something tangible, trying to define it in human terms, but the purpose is not logical. It is not strategic. It is not linear. The purpose is current. It moves through you. It expresses itself through you. And when you stop resisting it, it begins to create through you. I stopped needing to control it. I stopped needing to define it. I stopped needing to make sense of it. And that is when it started showing up in conversations and connections and opportunities. In moments of stillness, suddenly people started finding me, opportunities started aligning, doors that had been closed for years opened effortlessly. Not because I forced it, not because I begged for it, not because I became a match for it. Because when you align with your soul, the world aligns with you. When you clear the old patterns, the universe meets you where you are. It was not magic, it was not luck, it was alignment. I wasn't chasing it anymore. I wasn't proving anymore. I was not trying to earn it anymore. I had stepped into the divine flow, and that flow, creation, was effortless because creation is not about effort, it is about resilience. It is about alignment. It is about allowing the energy to move through you without resistance. And that is the thing. Creation does not happen through the mind. Creation happens through the heart, through the soul. It is not something you think through. It is not something you feel into. It's not something you feel into. It is something that rises through you when you stop blocking it. And for the first time, I was not blocking it anymore. I was not doubting my worth. I was not questioning my path. I was not trying to figure it all out. I was simply allowing. The energy began to move through my hands, my words, my work, through my relationships. It was no longer about needing to be seen. It was no longer about needing to be validated. It was no longer about needing to prove myself. It was no longer creating from emptiness. It was no longer creating from a void. It was no longer creating to be loved. It was creating without overflow, from fullness, from abundance, because now I did not need to be filled. I was already whole. And that was when I understood purpose is not finding something out for yourself. The purpose is to become the version of you that can hold it. Purpose is not about achievement. It is about alignment. It is not about becoming a match for the life that you already waiting for. Because the life you want, the purpose you seek, it's already here. It is already unfolding. It is already aligned. It is waiting for you to stop resisting. It is waiting for you to stop chasing, and is waiting for you to stop. It is waiting for you to remember it. You do not have to fight it. You do not have to prove yourself worthy for it. You don't have to earn it. You just have to become it. And so I stood there in the quiet, the stillness, in the fullness, and whispered, I'm ready. Not as a question, not as a plea, as a declaration, because I was not searching anymore. I was not reaching anymore. I was not proving anymore. I was creating, not from effort, from flow, not from. Wait, what the fuck? Not from scarcity, but from overflow. Not from ego, from alignment. And that is when I knew I had stepped into my purpose, not because I found it, but because I finally became the version of me who could hold it. That is the end of chapter 10. I'll be starting up chapter 11 next. God, me and Yoda gotta have a serious talk about this. Chapter 11, Love When You Stop Searching for It. I'd be playing What Is Love, Baby Don't Hurt Me, but it's copyright, and I really don't want to fight YouTube right now. How do you know what love is? That's the first line. How do you define it? How do you measure it? With a ruler. For years, I did not know. Rulers, they exist. I thought love was something you've earned. Nope. I thought something you prove yourself worthy of. Still no. Something you could be given or taken away. Wrong on both accounts. I thought love was fragile. It is. I thought love was conditional. Kind of is. I thought love was transactional. Definitely. But I was wrong. Love, real love, is nothing to do with the other person. I think I got that fixed. Because love, real love, has nothing to do with the other person. It is not about who stays or who leaves. It is about how someone treats you. It is about whether they choose you. Because love, true love, is not earned. It is revealed. It is remembered. It is not something you get. It is something you uncover. And that is where I had been wrong my whole life. I was looking for it. I was chasing it. I was begging for it. From people who did not know how to hold it. From people who could not even give it to themselves. And that is why it was so fragile. Because I was trying to receive it, something from someone else that I had not yet found within myself. But love is not something you receive. Love is something you are. I thought love was connection. I thought love was safety. I thought love was acceptance. But real love is not about conditions. It is about resonance. It is about resonance. Real love is not about safety. It is about freedom. Real love is not about acceptance. It is about recognition. Because real love does not happen when someone else sees you.
Real love happens when you remember yourself. And that is when it shifted. I was not after someone finally loved me correctly. I was not after I finally found the right relationship. It was not after I finally received the apology for which I was waiting. It happened when I stopped waiting. It happened when I stopped needing. It happened when I stopped searching. Because I finally understood love is not something you get, love is something you become. And that is when I started loving differently. I stopped needing people to validate me. I stopped needing people to choose me. I stopped needing people to understand me because the love I was searching for, it was already inside me. God, fuck you know. Friendship was all you needed all along. It was the kind of love. Oh, it was not the kind of love that was loud. It was not the kind of love that burns hot and fast. It was quiet. It was steady. It was present. It was not an achievement. It was not obsession. It was not possession. It was enough. It was whole. It was unshakably unmovable. Yeah, unshakable, unmovable. Unshakably. And that is when I knew. That is when I knew the truth. Love is not giving. Love is remembrance. Because you do not create love, you discover it. You remove the walls that were built to protect you. You burn through the fear that was blocking it. You dissolve the story that said you were not worthy of it. And beneath all that, love is just there, pure, unmoved, whole. And so I started loving differently. Not because people had changed, not because circumstances changed, not because I finally found someone who gave me the love I deserved, but because I became love. I stopped looking for it because I realized I already had it. I stopped needing it from other people because I realized I was already whole. And that is when my relationships changed, not because they finally figured out how to love me, but because I no longer needed them to. I no longer asked people to give me something they did not have. I no longer tried to pull love from people who were not capable of holding it. I no longer chased people who only knew how to love me when it was easy. Because I did not need to be filled anymore. I was already full. and that and that is the difference. Love is not about receiving, love is about overflowing. When you become love, you stop needing it from others. You stop begging for it, you stop chasing it because you already have it. You already are it. Clint, if you do not stop, you will go outside. And when you stop needing love, that's when you. Wait a minute, what? And that is when you attract is effortless. That is when you stop trying to be chosen because you have already chosen yourself. That is when you stop trying to be understood because you finally made peace with yourself. The world responds to that, and the world responds to that differently. People who
could not hold you before started showing up differently. Opportunities that were not available before started aligning effortlessly, not because you forced it, not because you chased it, not because you earned it, but because you became it. Love is not about fixing yourself to be chosen. Love is about loving yourself so deeply that the world has no choice but to mirror that back to you. Because love is not given, love is remembered. And so I stood there in the fullness of that truth, not waiting, not searching, not needing, just standing whole, open, aligned, and whispered, I am love. Not as a request, not as a plea, not as a question, as a truth, because I finally knew love was never outside of me. It was always within me, waiting to be remembered. That is the end of chapter 11. We'll be starting up chapter 12 next. Chapter 12, The Reflection, When the Soul Reshapes the World. It did not happen all at once. The external world did not immediately shift when I awakened. The circumstances did not change overnight. The people did not magically understand me. But I was not shaken by that anymore because now I was not looking for proof. I was not waiting for confirmation. I was not asking the world to reflect my values back to me because I already knew. I already knew who I was. I already knew what I carried. I already knew the truth of my being. And so when the world resisted, when things did not immediately align, when the opportunities did not unfold as quickly as I expected, I did not panic, I did not spiral, I did not retreat, because I finally understood the external world will always lag behind internal truth. Energy moves first, reality catches up later. The shift happened in the unseen before it manifested in the seen. And so I stopped looking for proof. I stopped needing signs. I stopped asking the universe to validate my alignment because I was the sign. I was the alignment. And that is when the energy shifted, not because I forced it, not because I chased it, but because I had become a match for it. Creation is not about effort. It is about resonance. Yeah, resonance. It is about becoming the frequency of what you desire. It is about understanding a confidently in your truth. Yeah. It's about standing so confidently in your truth that the world has no choice but to shift around you. That the world has no choice but to shift around you. And that is what happened. At first, nothing changed. The conversation stayed the same. The people acted the same. The opportunities seemed to slow to come. But I was different. My breathing was different. My presence was different. My energy was different. I was not reacting anymore. I was not trying to prove myself anymore. I was not trying to justify my worth anymore. I had become the truth, and the world slowly, but yeah, eventually, and the world slowly but inevitably began to shift. The conversation started to change. The people who could not me before started showing up differently. Opportunities that once passed me by started opening. Relationships that were built on shallow grounds slowly dissolved. Connections that are built on truth started deepening because I had stopped needing it and I started allowing. And that is the thing about creation. It does not come from force, it comes from resonance. It comes from becoming the match for what you desire. It comes from embodying the energy of what you seek because the world gives it to you. And so I moved differently. I was not striving anymore. I was not reaching anymore. I was not chasing anymore. I was walking with certainty. I spoke with clarity. I was existing with ease because now I was not trying to become a vibration. I was the vibration. And the world began to respond. People started asking what changed. How did you get here? What's different? And I smiled because the truth is nothing changed, and yet everything had. Because I was not doing it anymore, it was happening through me. I was not trying to control the outcome. I was moving in alignment with the energy. I was not trying to force the next step. I was allowing the next step to reveal itself, and it did. The right people, the right conversations, the right opportunity, the right timing, all of it not because I fought for it, not because I earned it, not because I figured it out, but because I had become a match for it. That is the secret. You do not chase alignment, you become alignment. You do not search for love, you become love. You do not hunt down peace, you become peace. And once you become it, the world cannot help but reflect it. But here is the test. The reflections will not come immediately. The outside world will resist at first. People will question you, criticize a circumstance. What the fuck? Circumstances will test you. The mind will try to pull back into doubt, but you hold the line, you stay in the energy, you stay in the frequency, because you know the truth. The shift always happens internally first. The reality always adjusts later. The alignment always manifests in divine timing. And so I stood there in the tension between the seen and unseen, between the inner knowing and the outer reflection, between what was real and what was still forming. And I held my ground. I did not beg, I did not force, I did not control it. I simply stayed aligned, steady, grounded, certain. And eventually the world caught up because the world always follows energy. And so I stood there in the unfolding, not waiting, but knowing. And I whispered, "It's already done," not as a hope, not as a wish, not as a request, as a truth, because I finally understood. You do not create from need, you create from fullness. You do not create from fear, you create from love. You do not create from scarcity, you create from overflow. And once
you become that energy, the world has no choice but to reflect it back on to you. Oh my god, I'm almost done, thank god. Alright, starting up chapter 13, just 2 more and this is finally done. Almost done, almost done. It's done. Chapter 13. The expansion. When presence becomes influence. I was not about saving them. I was not about fixing them. I was not about explaining myself anymore. I was about being. Because now I was not searching anymore. I was not trying anymore. I was not proving anymore. I had become the thing I was looking for. And now I could feel the ripple. I could feel the way my energy was changing the room. Oh, charging the room. Not because I was trying to be heard, but because I no longer needed to be heard. But because I no longer needed to be heard. I was not seeking validation anymore. I was not waiting to be understood anymore. I was not asking for approval anymore. The energy, and that energy, that stillness, that quiet, knowing people could feel it. They leaned into it without even realizing why. They softened around me without me having to say a word. I want you to remember all this stuff, Yoda, next time we do a Bolt of Glass dungeon run. They opened without me needing to ask, because my presence was no longer charged with need. It was charged with fullness. It was charged with alignment. It was charged with peace. And peace is contagion. What? Okay, contagious. Peace is contagious. When you carry peace, people feel it. When you embody love, people rise to meet you. When you stand in truth, people start remembering their own. And that is what expansion is. Not about preaching, not fixing, not convincing, just being, and letting the resonance from your energy become the medicine. I started noticing it in conversations. People would start opening up without even realizing why. They would ask me questions, not because I was offering answers, but because they could feel that I was trying to change them. I was not forcing it. I was not controlling it. I did not need them to heal. I was not holding space in that space. I was just holding space, and in that space, they felt safe enough to heal themselves. Yes, that is the thing. People do not heal because you tell them to or tell them how. People heal because they feel safe enough to open. And that is what I had become. A source of safety, a source of steadiness, a source of quiet knowing. Not because I was trying, but because I was no longer trying. Because I had finally settled into myself, because I finally became whole. And when you become whole, you no longer need to be filled, you no longer need to be heard, you no longer need to be chosen. And that is when the magic happens. Because when you no longer need it, you can finally give from overflow. You can finally show up without achievement. You can finally love without fear. And people can feel that. They feel the purity of it. They feel the steadiness of it. They feel the safety of it. And they rise to meet you there. Not because you asked them to, but because your energy is inviting them to. It is not about expression. That is what expansion is. It is about controlling the environment. It is about becoming so steady in yourself that even the environment rises to match you. It is not about fixing others. It is about allowing your wholeness to become an example. It is so, and so I stopped trying to fix them. I stopped trying to convince them. I stopped trying to make them understand. I just started showing up as myself, grounded, clear, open, free. And that energy started to shift. Conversations that used to drain me started to become effortless. Relationships that used to confuse me started to become clear. Boundaries that used to feel uncomfortable started to feel natural. Because now I was not navigating my life from my mind. I was moving from alignment. Hope that fixed it. And alignment does not explain itself. Alignment does not justify itself. Alignment simply is. And the world rises to meet it. But here is the thing about expansion. It does not happen overnight. The people around you will not immediately understand it. Some will question it. Some will resist it. Some will try to pull you back into old patterns. And that is the task, to stay steady, to hold the energy, to remain aligned, even when the external world has not caught up yet. And so I stood there in the middle of the tension between who I used to be and who I had become, between what the world expected and what I had chosen, and held my ground. I did not collapse. I did not shrink. I did not explain. I just stood there, open, unshaken, aligned. And eventually the world adjusted. Because that is the thing about expansion. It always creates tension because it creates alignment. It always shakes the ground before it creates stability. It always stretches the soul because it creates ease. But once you become it, the world has no choice but to rise to meet you there. And so I whispered, let it rise, not as a hope, not as a wish, not as a request, but as truth, because I already knew I was already happening, I was already unfolding, I was already done, because when you become the vibration, you no longer need to search for it. It finds you, you meet it, it expands through you, and the world because the world always follows energy, and that energy always begins with you. All right, that is the end of chapter 13. One more and we are done. We'll be starting chapter 14 next. It's almost done. It's almost done. Chapter 14, the mastery when alignment becomes the foundation. There we go. It did not happen suddenly. It was not a dramatic shift. It was not a single moment. It was gradual. It was subtle. It was quiet. Because that's how mastery happens. Slowly, quietly, softly. One day I just noticed I was not trying anymore. I was not fighting anymore. I was not bracing anymore. I was not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was not preparing for things to fall apart. I did not need life to prove itself to me because I finally understood it was not about controlling the outcome, it was about mastering the response. I had stopped stopped reaching, I had stopped searching, I had stopped doubting, and that is when I knew I crossed the threshold. Because now peace was not something I was trying to find anymore, peace was something I had become, and when life tried to pull me out of it, I did not panic, I did not spiral, I did not collapse. I just returned, naturally, easily, effortlessly, because the mind was not fighting the soul anymore. The conscience and the subconscious were no longer at war. The conscious mind had learned to trust the soul. The subconscious mind had begun reprogramming, been reprogrammed by the truth. My nervous system had settled, my breathing had deepened, my body had softened. I was not living in fear anymore. I was not living from scarcity anymore. I was not living from reaction anymore. I was living from the flow. Not because life had become easy, but because I had become steady. Not because I had figured it all out, but because I had learned how to hold the unknown. That is the thing about mastery. It is not about controlling life. It is about knowing how to navigate it without losing yourself. And that is where I landed. There was still noise, there was still chaos, there was still people who did not understand me. There were still situations that I did not align, but none of it shocked me anymore. Yeah, shocked me anymore. But none of it shocked me anymore. Because now I knew how to return to my center. I knew how to find stillness in the storm. I knew how to let life flow without needing to control it. And that's mastery, not perfection. Consistency, not control. Trust, not certainty. Faith. I had learned how to hold both the light and the shadow, the chaos and the stillness, the joy and the grief, the beginning and the end. I had learned how to breathe through it all, and the mind had stopped resisting. And I gotta make sure this is right. There we go. I had learned how to trust the soul. I had learned how to align as it alignment is not about answers, it is about presence. I had learned that safety is not about control, it is about allowing. And so I stopped needing to figure it all out. I stopped needing to stopped needing, yeah, I stopped needing to know what comes next. I stopped needing to hold on so tightly because I finally understood. Because I finally understood life is not asking me to figure it out. Life is asking me to show up. Life is asking me to trust. Life is asking me to stay open. And so I stayed open. I stopped needing to be seen. I stopped needing to be chosen. I stopped needing to be validated. Because I had already chosen myself, I had already validated myself, I had already been seen, and that is the thing about gratitude. It is not about being thankful when things are good. It is about being thankful even when they are not. Gratitude for the highs and gratitude for the lows. Gratitude for the people who stay and gratitude for the ones who leave. Gratitude for what was given and gratitude for what was taken away. Because now I finally understood that nothing was ever being taken from me. It was always being aligned for me. It was all making space for what was meant to stay. It was all leading me back to myself. And so I whispered, thank you. Thank you for the loss. Thank you for the chaos. Thank you for the endings. Thank you for the rebuilding. Thank you for teaching me how to trust again. Thank you for teaching me how to surrender again. Thank you for teaching me how to soften again. Because now I'm not scared anymore. I'm not guarded anymore. I am not doubting anymore. Now I'm ready. Not because I have the answers, not because I know the outcome, not because I feel in control, but because I knew how to stay steady even when I did not. And that is mastery. Not perfection, presence, not control, truth, not knowing, being. And so I stood there in the fullness of knowing, that grounded, open, soft, unshaken. And I whispered, I'm ready. Not as a request, not as a plea, not as hope, as a truth, as a knowing, as a state of being, because I finally knew I was not waiting for life to align anymore. I had already aligned. I was not asking for peace anymore. I had already become peace. I was not asking to be loved anymore. I had already become love. And now life would rise to meet me there. Conclusion, the arrival, when the becoming begins. You made it through the dark, through the fire, through the silence, through the surrender, through the becoming. You made it. But you did not arrive where you thought you would, because the truth is, there is no finish line, there's no destination, there is no final place where everything suddenly makes sense, because alignment is not about peace, it is a state of being, and now you know how to live there. Now you know how to return to it, even when life tries to pull you away. Now you know how to trust the flow, even when it does not make sense. Now you know how to breathe, even when the air feels thin. Now you know how to stand, even when the ground shakes beneath your feet. This is a gift. This is the gift of this journey. Not perfection, presence, not control, trust, not certainty, faith. You have learned how to hold both the light and the shadow, joy and grief. The expansion and the contraction? Yeah, contractions. The rising and the falling. You are not afraid of the fall anymore because you finally understand there is no such thing as falling, only being caught, only being held.
only being redirected. And now you understand that the divine was always holding you, even when you are too lost to feel it, even when you were too angry to see it, even when you were too guarded to trust it. It was there, it was always there, waiting for you to remember. And now you remember. You have become the thing for which you were searching. You had become the peace you were chasing. You had become the love you were craving. You had become the answers for which you were praying. And now you are ready to lead, not from ego, but from alignment, not from force, but from the flow, not from desperation, but from fullness. Because you are not empty anymore, you are full. Okay, we're finally done, thank God. I'm not reading the epilogue. I did not read the epilogue. I'm not reading the prologue. We're done. We're finally done. I'm going to give my closing thoughts and arguments coming up here later. Thank you.
Okay. I just got through reading through this. There will be a link in the description to all the videos. I hope everyone picks up a copy. I hope everyone enjoys my reading of this. A good friend of mine wrote it. And oh my God. Yoda, buddy, boo-boo. I hope to God we can still be friends after everything I'm about to say about your book, The Awakening, A Sacred Journey of Healing and Truth. And the truth is that I hate, with a passion, the chicken noodle soup for the soul, the help yourself, whatever you put out in the universe comes back to you, energy bullshit. I've never cared for it. Honestly, it reminds me of The Secret a good bit. And I hated that book. I really hated that book. Now, I'll admit, I am an unbridled ball of chaos and depression that has simply stopped giving a shit what people think or say about me since I was 9. Ever since I was a kid, my older brother died in his sleep in the bunk bed literally right above me. And after that, we were basically just felt like almost every other month I was back at their funeral home because one of my family members died. I want to say it was either my Aunt Wanda or Aunt Danya. It was probably Danya, if I remember correctly. I had this thought pop into my head that this is where we all end up. In this building, in a pine box, about to be laid to rest, surrounded by friends and family who were just bawling their eyes out. And as a kid, it never made sense to me. As an adult, it does. Life is shit, so try not to give a shit. And it's when I had that thought, I started losing a lot of friends. I don't need you in my life. You're a jerk. I don't need you in my life. You're a bitch. I straight up just disowned my own older sister, who I loved to death for so long, because I realized she's a toxic person who's just spiraling out of control. I still love her. She's always going to be my sister. I have nothing to do with her. I don't know where she is. I don't know what she's doing. I don't care. Because she does nothing but bring useless drama into my life that I don't fucking need. And that's the thing. What I finally realized as an adult is this right here. And if you agree with me, great. If you want to say I'm completely fucking insane, I won't begrudge you. And by the way, this is not scripted. We are nothing but the memories we leave behind. If you believe in heaven, great. I'm Mormon myself. If you are atheist, fine. But you have to admit that no one exists in a vacuum. None of us do. Someone loves you. Someone is going to remember you. How you choose to be remembered is all you have in life. If you want to be a complete asshole, be a complete asshole. If you want to try to be a good person, you can never stop trying. And that's the thing. If you need this genre of book to tell you you're not broken, there's nothing I can tell you. You need to figure that out yourself. I hate self-help books with a passion because they all feel the same. And Yoda, I hope to God we are still friends after this, because I despise self-help books for this reason. If you need someone to tell you to love yourself, there's no fixing you. Because you are not entitled to anyone's love. You are not entitled to anyone's respect but your own. If you keep putting walls around your heart, guess what? The world doesn't care. It's going to break them down and come in whether you like it or not. I've never had walls around my heart because I just said, fuck it, come at me. And it's worked for me. I've long since stopped trying to control the world around me because it's a never-ending job. You always have to keep it up. And at that point, it's really not worth fighting. Just shit's gonna happen. Learn to go with the flow. Sure, I get angry. Sure, I get upset. I'm still super pissed off at that bitch for smashing my roommate's car to pieces that I'm still paying for. But there's nothing I can do about it. Except just keep going. And that's life. It's an endurance game. How far can you go? How far are you willing to go? Do you have both the mental, spiritual, and physical fortitude to see it through to the end? We don't know how long we have. And there's something terrifying and beautiful about that all at the same time. I could literally die tonight as of recording this and publishing it. And the only thing that I am concerned about is my little brothers, my dad, what's left of my family, how are they going to remember me? My friends, the ones I've chosen to let in. Just remember that if you need to hear anything in this book, I hope it helps. Personally, I despise this genre because I find them incredibly cheap. I find them incredibly preachy. I find them lacking in so many ways. Now, I was able to shotgun through this pretty quickly. I did not read the prologue. I did not read the epilogue. That is just how much I hate this genre, because they are cheap. There's a positive side to that maybe what Yoda wrote down is something that somebody desperately needed to hear today. At the same time, it's, okay, this didn't have anything you personally needed. Here's another one that's like $10. Like I said, they're cheap. I find them lacking. I find them preachy. Yoda's wasn't preachy. I'll give him that. It was a pretty quick read. Like 5 chapters most to a chapter, or 5 pages to a chapter max. And as I'm sitting here reflecting on everything that he wrote down, please pick up a copy, is kind of all useless information to me. I've never had walls around my heart because I've never felt the need to put them up. I've never felt the need to control any damn thing because life is completely uncontrollable. I've never felt the need to question who I am and my place in the world because I am who I am, and if you don't like me, then fuck off. I don't need you in my life. I've never once felt guarded because bring it on. Physically, mentally, spiritually, fuck it, bring it on. I deal with assholes on a constant daily basis. I dealt with even more back when I worked retail. There's always going to be assholes in your life. There's nothing you can do about it. You can only have the people you care about, who you want to keep close to you. And there's the assholes that you don't need in your life. Just throw them away. I hope somebody heard this. I hope somebody desperately needed to hear what Yoda wrote. And I hope that they heal. I don't need healing. I'm already whole. I don't care for truth. I have my own. I don't care for this genre because I've never needed it. And I hope that this helped someone who desperately needed help today, or can I laugh at my own fucking craziness? And I just hope that me and Yoda can still be friends after I have completely shotgunned through this with a quickness that is just how much I hate this genre. Yoda, you're still my bro. I'll still hang out with you. We'll still shoot some shit on Destiny 2. Hope everyone has a good day.